Hi, welcome to UFPTC, or the Umbrella Forms Penetration Testing course. I'm NapalmFire. So today we're going to be talking about some Backtrack basics to get you all started in the world of Linux and Backtrack. So first off, installing it is super easy. Download the ISO from the Backtrack website, throw it in a VM, install it on a local computer. I don't really care what you do. Just get it on a computer because this is pretty much our main tool. We'll be learning a little bit about some Windows XP side stuff, especially when we start dealing with like VPNs. I prefer Windows for that because Windows actually makes it really easy. But for everything else, Backtrack is your guy. So first off, to log in, all you do is you type in root. That is the super user administrator account. Normally on most Linux systems, they won't want you to log in as root. Here they do because most of the tools are going to need it anyways, and it's more for our niceness than it is for security's sake, because there's always a security usability trade-off. So there we go. We got root typed in, and then the password is Tor, T-O-O-R, although mine is different because I have changed it. There we go. All right, so once you log in, it'll present you with a nice little last login screen, give you some of the statistics on what's going on your system, talk about some of the processes, which users are logged in, yada yada. So next we're presented with a little terminal. So we're going to talk about the terminal in a lot of depth in this course because the terminal is the most useful thing on the face of the planet. There is no GUI tool I know of that is as good as the terminal. Some programs are really good for GUI. Some of them are pretty much have to use the GUI only. But if you can use the terminal for something, use it. Just don't, because that helps you get a better understanding on what's going on underneath it all, and it lets you control things a lot better, and especially for automation. So once we're in, first thing I want you guys to do is to change your password. You can do this just by typing passwd into your terminal and pressing enter. It'll ask you for your new Unix password. Just type it in. It'll ask it for it again, and it'll tell you the password was successfully changed. The reason you want to do this first thing is because if you start an SSH service, it might be a little bit easy for someone to figure out that you're using Backtrack, and if you start an SSH service, which we'll talk about later, with the default password, it can allow someone to get in just super easily. So once you've changed your password, oh, that's right. Actually, one thing I did want to talk about before we move on is safe passwords. People don't really understand that that you don't have to make super complicated passwords to make a good password. For instance, this password right here isn't actually that great of a password. Even though it looks all fancy and scary and whatnot, it's really not that great of a password. The best passwords are huge phrases because it takes a longer time, when we talk about this more in the password attacking section. But in this section, just basically try to make it a phrase, throw in like a number. So like that would be a wonderful password. It's long, it's hard to guess, and I can almost guarantee that there's going to be no rainbow table that has that. And we'll talk about all of this later. So next, let's talk about getting into the GUI mode of Backtrack. I mentioned that the terminal mode is really awesome, and you should use it at all conveniences. But a lot of tools in Backtrack have GUI only versions, and so you can't use the terminal as nice as it would be. So to start the GUI, just type in start X and press enter. Your computer will do some magic, and X window will pop up eventually. Sometimes it takes a bit, depending on your computer. Unfortunately, I'm using a VM, so it's a little bit different. Although I think it replaced my background, which would really make me unhappy right now. I think it totally did. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was going to be really angry if it changed my background again. I just spent like 3 hours trying to make sure that it didn't. So let's talk real quick about GNOME. GNOME is the desktop manager that's default in Backtrack. You can also get a KDE version. I'm not too partial to KDE. Lots of people are. I'm a GNOME guy, so sorry about that, KDE users. But if you really do like KDE, this course goes basically along with it as well. You might have to do some extra special things, but I'm not going to cover it, so fuck you, KDE. I'm just kidding. I respect KDE. So next, let's talk about some of the GUI menus. So if you've used Ubuntu before, you're going to feel right at home with Backtrack. You know, you've got your applications, places, system, but there is something very special about Backtrack, and that's this wonderful little directory right here in applications, the Backtrack directory. Here, this contains all the tools you're going to need for, you know, attacking computers. So, you know, you've got a lot of cool stress testing tools. You've got, you know, OS backdoors, tunneling, all sorts of stuff is great stuff is in here. And in fact, I expect you to all to explore and look at some of the stuff that's in here. Basically, a good understanding of the tools that are in Backtrack is going to be a great bonus for you for later stuff. You know, when you need to exploit your way into machines where you're not really too certain on what tools you should use, knowing all the tool sets will definitely get you there a lot better. So not all the tools are listed in this directory, though. So to actually get to the directory where all the tools are located, I'm going to use the GUI way because we're going to be talking about the actually good way to do it, the terminal way, in what's it called? In a later unit. So here we're going to be. So here's the root of our system, the file system. So we go into pentest. Pentest is the directory where all our tools are kept. It has a similar, nice, pretty layout to this menu, but this one, honestly, in my opinion, it's a little bit more cryptic because you can't like easily look into all of these. So honestly, you're probably, unless you really know what you're looking for, some of these directories might be a bit misleading, especially for trying to find certain tools. You might have a little bit of trouble because they fall under you know, other categories as well. So the big thing, though, that I want you all to remember, very important, is in the passwords directory, there's a word list. This thing right here, darkcode.lst. This is a really good word list for breaking passwords. When we talk about the password attacks, I just want to make sure everyone knows it's there. Be sure to remember that because that will save your life in some situations. So last but not least, let's talk about the terminal. So this is we're going to be covering this a lot more in later chapters, but I want to make sure that you guys know it's there. This is the same window that we, you know, opened up when we first started Backtrack. It basically has the terminal, lets you access the back end of the computer. So basically, just to get to the pentest directory in here, just type in cd/pentest, press enter, and you can see we're in there. We're going to be talking about this a lot more in depth next chapter, more about the terminal, not actually about the pentest directory, because we're going to be talking about setting up networks and how a lot of the networking stuff works. We won't be going super in depth into it. It's just to more or less get you ready. Oh, I missed one thing before we go. So Backtrack has a lot of servers installed on it. A server is something that gives something to someone else. You know, becomes an application kind of use. So to start a lot of the services that are in Backtrack, you can just go to Services and click any of these. You know, you've got your HTTP server, Apache. You've got Snort and your SSH service, which we'll be talking about a lot more later. You're going to really need to know a lot of how these work, especially Apache, especially SSH, and especially MySQL, because we're going to be using them a lot throughout the entirety of this course. So that's all I have for you guys right now. You know, thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more videos.